It's Wednesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Hope you guys are having a great day out there. Happy to be back for another day. Terrific show. Might have a record here. I was just thinking about that. 4 guests on today's show. I can't remember a time when we have had 4 guests, at least 4 different guests, not interviewed at the same time on this show. But we have that today in reverse order of how they're going to appear on the show. Ben Goessling from the Tribune will join me here later on to talk Vikings, the significance of Joe Flacco starting for the Colts against the Vikings on Sunday. That word was leaked on Tuesday. The 39-year-old veteran replacing 22-year-old second-year quarterback Anthony Richardson. You cannot get much different stylistically than those two quarterbacks, so a much different game on Sunday night when the Vikings face the Colts. Ben and I will break down the significance of that at the end of the show. Chris Carr from the Tribune will join me to talk high school sports. Chip Scoggins will join me to talk about his football across Minnesota feature. And in just a minute, Randy Johnson will join me to talk Gopher football, probably the hottest team in town, maybe next to the Wild. 3 straight wins for the Gophers, changing the whole scope of their season to kind of a what-if season, as I'll get into with Randy in just a minute. First, though, what did I miss? The more things change, the more they stay the same. I think that's the theme of the 3 big games that happened on Tuesday in Minnesota sports. The Wild, like I said, stayed hot. They beat Pittsburgh 5-3. A 5-1-1 road trip is a long road trip to start this season, and they passed it with flying colors. They were home for 2 at the beginning, and then this long road trip. They looked like a team that's, again, like I've said, better than we thought they were. Kirill Kaprizov continues to be impressive, but the big story from this game and the more things change, the more they stay the same angle on this was Marc-Andre Fleury, the legend, the goalie for the Wild, who is back for one more year. We thought maybe he was on his retirement tour last year, but no, he's back for one more year, beating his former team, the team that he won all those Stanley Cups with, getting a nice tribute, a nice send-off in Pittsburgh. Good for Marc-Andre Fleury, and even better for the Wild that they come away with that 5-3 win in Pittsburgh. Just a really impressive road trip. You got to be impressed with that team right now. We'll see if it is sustainable over 82 games, but I do like what I'm seeing from them right now. Speaking of the more things change, the more they stay the same, the Timberwolves still can't get over the hump with the Dallas Mavericks. I thought this might be a team that was better suited to play against Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving and company, just because they've added another perimeter defender in Dante DiVincenzo. You've got him, you've got Jaden McDaniels, you've got Anthony Edwards, you've got Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a lot of guys you can throw out there to switch, to hound those guards, to play tough down the stretch, and instead it just doesn't matter. Those guys make big shot after big shot. Probably the biggest was Kyrie making a 3 off of a long possession when Dallas got an offensive rebound. They just killed the Wolves on the glass, got to a lot of those loose balls. If the Wolves don't clean that up, if they can't become a better rebounding team, and you would think they'd be a better rebounding team, I think that's one thing they've lost a little bit of with the Carl Anthony Towns trade. He was a pretty good rebounder. Julius Randle maybe not as good a rebounder as Carl Anthony Towns, but this is something they're going to struggle with, especially those long rebounds. I don't think their wings are especially good rebounders. I think it comes down to a want-to mentality sometimes, and they just don't quite get after it like you would want them to. So they need to clean that up. They need to get less sloppy with the ball. They need to get better in those kind of winning time situations, so you're not having those back-breaking threes by Kyrie, by Luka. Luka hit another logo 3 last night that was just another killer in that game. The Wolves got down by too much, though. They were kind of trying to come back. They've got to be better in the first 3.5 quarters, especially those kind of middle squishy quarters, so they don't put themselves into those must-have possessions all the time, because Dallas is going to kill you in those possessions. Finally, John Bartholer and I talked about this on Tuesday's show. Minnesota United in the playoffs against Real Salt Lake. We were expecting a low-scoring, close game that could go down to penalty kicks. Well, it was 0-0 after 90 minutes. The Loons prevail in penalty kicks. Real Salt Lake's, I think, 6th kicker goes high off the crossbar, misses. and the Loons escape with the win. It's a best 2 of 3, so Saturday's game at Allianz Field is a chance for Minnesota United to win and advance. Will someone score a regulation goal? Will this be something other than a draw after regulation? This is the 5th straight time the teams have played to a 90-minute draw, but of course, in the postseason, you go straight to penalty kicks. There's not a draw. You got to have a winner. And I think in the penalty kick situations, it does benefit Minnesota United. Dane St. Clair, good on penalty kicks. He was able to affect shooters enough that Real Salt Lake missed 2 of them yesterday. Both of them were high. It's kind of funny. I was watching the shootout. I didn't watch much of the game, but I got in front of a screen to watch the shootout, and I was just watching it, and I was like, just kind of like analyzing the body language of different shooters, and it was weird. I was able to kind of predict the Loons shooter that got stopped. I was like, this guy doesn't look confident. I think he's gonna miss. He's gonna get saved, and sure enough, he did. The next guy that stepped up for Real Salt Lake, I was like, this guy looks too confident. I think he's gonna blast it over the net, and sure enough, he did. Now, I'm the only one that knows this. I didn't say this to anybody. Got to take me at my word. I for some reason had a weird predictive ability in that shootout to say who was going to score, who was going to miss. So maybe stick with me next time on those shootouts. I'll try to give you a heads up as to what I'm seeing, if that indeed is what happens again Saturday at Allianz Field. Let's talk Gopher football with Randy Johnson from the Star Tribune. Randy, you were probably covering the hottest team in town. I might have said it last week, but it certainly holds true now that the Gophers have walloped Maryland in a game that a lot of us thought maybe would be close, at least, even if we thought the Gophers had the edge. 48-23 was that the final in that game?
48-23. Yeah, I was expecting a tight game. It just seems like that they were two pretty evenly matched teams. They both had pulled off upsets over USC. It seemed like Maryland had a really good passing game coming in, and the Gophers just short-circuited that from the start. Pick 6 by Justin Wally, then Coy Parrish gets his act going, picks one off and takes the 45 yards to set up a field goal. And offense was humming right away. First 2 drives, they score touchdowns, and it's before you know it, it's 24-0.
Is this just a case of a team that needed a little while to kind of rev up? Because this is not the team that we watched play North Carolina at the start of the season. It doesn't even closely resemble that team, especially on offense.
Yeah, I think the offense has improved quite a bit during the season. And specifically quarterback Max Brosmer, he's playing at an incredibly high level right now. Big Ten Player of the Week. He went 26 of 33 for 320 yards and 4 touchdowns, no picks. He's basically over the past 3 games completing 78.8% of his passes. He's on a really good tear right now. It's they're getting what they thought they were going to get when they took him from New Hampshire in the FCS level, where he was one of the 3 finalists for Player of the Year at that division. He's really spread the ball around really well. You can see him go through his progressions each time he's back to pass. The offensive line gave him all day too. That helped out a lot. He didn't no sacks and no quarterback hurries by Maryland. So it's they have a lot working well right now.
One of the things working well is mostly on the defensive side of the ball, although as we saw, they gave Coy Parrish an offensive snap on Saturday, maybe more to come with that. But 5 interceptions, like you said, another one against Maryland, leading the Big Ten, true freshman, leading the Big Ten with 5 interceptions. I see only one player above him nationally. Noel Williams from California has 6. 3 other guys with 5, including Coy Parrish nationally. How do we explain what he's been able to do at such a young age and with no experience, especially for someone who didn't come in early, as we've talked about?
Yeah, I think it's just you had a player that was a lot more ready to play than we probably realized. He's sitting there. He's playing at Esco High School, not the biggest school in Minnesota, and you figure there's going to be a huge learning curve to go out against Big Ten athletes, but he's passed it with flying colors so far. I mean, he's just been such a quick study. He's got a nose for the football. It just always seems to find him, and it's been really entertaining to watch. And I think the fans are just falling in love with this kid.
If he's doing this in the Big Ten right now, we have to go back like a year and watch, because it must have been completely unfair for him to play some of these smaller schools up in northern Minnesota. If he's that good, if he's 1 year removed from doing this in high school.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. One weekend up there, PJ Fleck and his staff were up there to recruit to look in on one of Coy's games, and he has a pick six, and he's going down the sideline, and he sees PJ and the coaches there, and then flashes them the peace sign, and it's just he's an interesting kid. He's having fun playing football. He's just seems like he's always smiling and just has an effervescent personality.
You can only do that if you're that good, right?
Yeah.
Like anybody else, if you're just like, if you think you're better than you are and you do that, everybody's going to know. But if you're just that good, you can get away with something like that.
Yeah, it's a lot of confidence. He's not lacking in that, and maybe cockiness too. But I haven't noticed him being like taunting or anything like that. It seems like he's enjoying the moment and celebrating with his teammates.
And as a team, they've got to have a ton of confidence, like you said. 3 wins in a row. The impressive win over USC that kind of started it all with the fourth quarter comeback. Another fourth quarter comeback to beat UCLA on the road, and then this one over Maryland. Gets tougher, I would say, from here. Not that these games have been pushovers, but at Illinois this week will be a challenge. Although odds makers, if I'm reading this right, they've been favored in some places to win this game. Even though you might look at it at face value and say Illinois' got a better record. They had a better start to the season. Illinois coming off a loss, but to Oregon, like everybody's going to lose to Oregon. What do you make of this matchup?
It's going to be interesting because Illinois plays a hard game. They hit you in the mouth. They hit you on both offense and defense. They've got a quarterback who could pass pretty well, but he's nimble enough to get out of the pocket and hurt you with his legs too. It's going to be one that the Gophers are due to beat this team. They're 0-3 against Bielema against Bielema since he's been the Illinois coach. The Bielema's 10-0 against the Gophers all time, factoring in 7 wins with Wisconsin against different Gophers coaches than PJ Fleck. It's one that if they want to put a big stamp on their season, then this would be a second win over a ranked team. This is a chance they have. I think they're going to go in there pretty confident. It's not one that's Illinois is going to be tough. I know that about them. They play pretty well at home. They held Michigan down very well. They beat them 21-7. So it's a team that does a lot of things well.
Yeah, it does a lot of things well, and I don't imagine you're not going to probably have a game at the end of the day where Max Brosmer is not pressured at all. If this is the kind of team that we think they are, they'll put pressure on him. He'll have to make some plays when things aren't quite as clean, which he's done this year. But it feels like that kind of game where he's going to have to make some tough third down throws. There's going to be dirty pockets, things like that. Yeah,
I think too that the one thing about the Gophers that they didn't do particularly well against Maryland is run the ball. They struggled for a while. They ended up the stats got pushed up quite a bit because Darius Taylor had a 51-yard touchdown run. But that's the one thing. They haven't been a great rushing team this year. They've been doing it by passing first, and I think they'd like to get a little more balance that way. Where when you need to say shut down a game, say you need something in a 4-minute drill type of thing, where you need to get a couple first downs. If you can keep it on the ground, that would be preferable. But they found ways to win differently this year.
Opportunity to be bowl eligible if they win, of course, but setting your sights higher than that. Where do they keep kind of climbing in the Big Ten, and not just the standings, but how we think of them, power rankings, things like that. Where do you see them now in kind of this big picture of the 18 teams in the Big Ten?
I had them this week around 7. Was it 7 or 8? 7 in there. Right now, they're kind of for bowl purposes. It's really going to depend on what happens with Indiana. If things play out where Indiana joins what it's going to be looking like Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State in the playoff field. If the Big Ten gets 4 teams, then everybody jumps up a rung, and the Gophers could get to a place like, say, the Duke's Mayo Bowl or Music City Bowl, or if they, say they finish strong with 3 or 4 more wins. possibly one of the Florida Bowls, Tampa or Orlando. But that'd have to take a pretty big finish like that. But they're the big thing I'm sure they want to do is avoid Detroit if they can. I mean, the fan base, they've been there quite often in the past decade, and I think they'd rather go somewhere else. I've seen projections where you got them in the pinstripe again. They're there a couple years ago, so I'm a little doubtful on that. They might end up being, they could end up in a bowl that's not affiliated with the Big Ten if there's a spot there. I've seen places like the Birmingham Bowl, the First Responders Bowl in Dallas, things like that. It really just depends on how many wins they get. If they get to eight wins, they should be moving up a bit.
Hard not to play the what if game at this point. Like, I wouldn't have thought we'd be at this spot, but you lose by 1 to North Carolina, plenty of opportunities to win that game, including a kick that missed at the end. The Michigan game, of course, dug themselves a hole, but had a chance in the end, if the onside kick call goes a different way, to at least tie and perhaps go ahead in that game. I mean, again, they've had games that went down to the wire, went their way. They win the UCLA game in the closing seconds, things like that. But if you put every what if in the win column, they could be 7-1 right now, and we could be talking about a team that has the potential to do more than just go to a nice bowl game at this point. Yeah,
that's the one thing that makes the 12-team playoff, and I'm assuming it'll get the 16 teams in not too distant in the future, where it puts a lot of things in play for a lot of teams. That 2019 Gophers team that went 11-2. Had they would have been right in the mix for the playoff, in that year had they had these rules. It just kind of depends on it depends on which conference. I mean, obviously the Big Ten and the SEC will be usually getting more teams than, say, the ACC and the Big 12 in there. So it's a good chance for the Gophers and other programs, especially like Indiana, jumping up and having their best year in half a century or more.
Yeah, especially if one of the traditional powers has a down year. Michigan having a down year. Yep. Penn State, very good, but I don't know if they're invincible, things like that. So in those years where you have a really good team, I think there is a chance now where in the past it just wasn't that opportunity to get that far. If you got to get into the 4, I don't think you're probably going to break through. But 12, 16, I can see it happening. Yep. Probably not this year because of what the hole they've dug themselves. Yes. But maybe building some momentum for future seasons. Randy, enjoy it. I think, are you going to be there with Lavelle? Is that what I understand?
Evidently, Lavelle Neal III is going to make his triumphant return to a place where he once attended. So
I heard that. I've heard that. So okay, yes,
I'll have to keep him on the straight and narrow here, remembering that he's there to help cover the Gophers. I think he's got a little bit of blue and orange in his blood there. So yes. I got to make sure he's remembering which team that we're there for.
I think he said he hasn't been on that campus for like 30 years. So this will be interesting for him. So. Yeah. Keep him on the straight and narrow. That's a good plan. You guys enjoy yourselves as much as you can, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks.
Postscript to my conversation with Randy. I don't know if this is a misprint, but it doesn't look like it. The Gophers opened up as 2.5-point underdogs in this Illinois game, and now most places they are a 3-point favorite. That is a huge line swing. Must have been a lot of money coming in on one side of that to make it flip, but odds makers now see the Gophers as a road favorite against Illinois. We'll see if they were able to get it done in this game, become bowl eligible, and continue this ascent this season. It's Football Across Minnesota time on Daily Delivery. Chip Scoggins with me, as always, writing the Football Across Minnesota feature. Chip, sounds like you got a good one this week. Tell me a little bit more about Owen Girton from Benilde St. Margaret's.
Yeah, Owen is a senior cornerback who had a interception Saturday to help Benilde's get to the section finals with the win over DeSalle. But it's probably, I don't know if it's a stretch to call it a minor miracle that he's out there playing, and he also plays lacrosse and basketball. But when he was 9 years old, Owen was diagnosed with, and I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly, arteriovenous malformation. It's a brain disorder, a brain condition. Essentially, blood vessels get tangled in your brain and can lead to a bleed. There's no real sometimes there's no symptoms. He didn't have symptoms. Tragically, Owen's parents had their 3 kids. He has 2 older sisters. Sent them to have brain scans after they had a niece die from a brain bleed.
Oh,
she was a freshman in high school in 2016. She was a relative, a cousin through marriage only, so there wasn't like any genetic connection here. But she tragically died from a brain bleed that was caused by an AVM. So they put their kids. They sent them to doctors, had brain scans, and the 2 older daughters were fine, but they found a AVM in Owen's brain. And so, as Dad said, it was just a terrible coincidence. And so they had a couple options, either therapy or either radiation or surgery, and they elected to send him to or take him to Boston's Children's Hospital.
Wow.
To have the surgery there because they're renowned for it and have a great reputation. They treat a lot of cases, and he hit it off with this surgeon doctor that took care of him and had the surgery, had it removed. It took 17 hours over 2 days to fix the lesion, and had to learn how to walk again and feed himself again, and some short-term memory loss. So he came back, had 6 months of intensive therapy, both with physical, speech, and occupational. This is when he was in 4th grade, so he was playing catch up both academically, physically, and all the other things that go in that. And he healed and took a lot of hard work, a lot of hours spent both on his academics, on his physical well-being, on his speech, on his memory loss, and athletically. And ironically, I had sent an email to his to the doctor who he saw in Boston, and this tells you about the bond that he had with the doctor. The doctor emailed back, and last week, and over the weekend, Friday, he said, "I have very limited internet connection. I'm in Nepal, hiking in the Himalayan mountains."
Oh wow!
He has such a connection with this kid. He gave me a couple things. He called it a very complicated case that he had to treat, and it said it was he needed a lot of support and a lot of help to get to where he's at now. And he's come back, and all you would really see, he doesn't really show the scar to his too many people, but his dad told me, but he showed me, asked him where it was, and he has a scar above his left ear where the surgery took place, and he's back to normal. He said he still has some memory issues on certain tests that he takes, but he's playing football. He won a lacrosse state championship with Benil's this past spring as a junior year. He's hoping to be on the basketball team this year, so he's a 3-sport athlete there at Benil's and just really doing great. And sort of the story of perseverance for a kid who overcame a pretty traumatic thing.
Well, that's got to be tough for the parents. Like, what a decision to make, because he's not having any symptoms, right? When they do the test, right? But they know that this could present, going to be a potential to present problems. So it's like you're going to put him through months, or of having to overcome this. But it's this long-term goal. But I'm sure it's a risky procedure in the beginning. So I can't imagine having to make that choice as a parent.
Yeah, and they looked at both radiation, and the thing with radiation was you could go through 6 months of radiation and still need the surgery.
Yep.
And so they felt like, what, let's just get this thing taken care of with the surgery. But if there is a bleed, it can be tragic. They had it happen in their family, and so when there's a problem that serious or potentially serious with your child's brain, yes, it was a very scary moment for the parent and a time for the parents. I mean, Owen said he was still a little too young to fully comprehend the gravity of everything. He knew he had something wrong, but probably didn't understand the magnitude of it. But the parents, for sure, having lost a niece to a brain bleed that was caused by this, I think they understood, like, hey, we need to get this thing fixed right away.
Wow. Well, great story. And sounds like he's having a big impact on the field as well, with a big interception, like you said, over the weekend. Chip, quickly, who got the game balls? I'm guessing maybe somebody from the Gophers got one this week. I'm not sure.
Three game balls this week. Max Brosmer, Gophers quarterback, was just outstanding what he's done for that program. I'll be writing about later this week in a different column, but 26 of 30, 320 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's just absolutely changed the identity of that program. Hope Adebayo, St. Thomas running back, monster game against San Diego. Listen to these numbers. 18 carries, 277 yards, 3 touchdowns. 277 yards on 18
That's a
carries.
lot.
What a day.
That seems like a lot.
That's amazing. And then how about Jackson Thornburg from Apple Valley, quarterback? They're facing undefeated Two Rivers, ranked number 6 in the state. Jackson goes 20 of 22 passing for 227 yards with 3 touchdowns, including a 52-yarder with 2.5 minutes left. That was the game winner. He also rushed for 12 times for 58 yards and 2 touchdowns. So just a massive performance by Jackson to lead Apple Valley to the upset there.
Wow. Very cool. Chip, appreciate it as always. Good stuff. And how many more of these do we got? We're kind of getting down to it, aren't we?
We typically go through the Prep Bowl in late November, so probably 4 or 5 of them left. So let's finish the season strong.
Sounds good. Happy to have him. Take care, Chip. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mikey.
Great story from Chip. Go read that on StarTribune.com and in your newspaper. Part of our expanded high school sports coverage. Chip's going to be writing a little bit more about high school sports. We've got an expanded high school sports team that I'm excited to tell you about right now with my next guest, Chris Carr. It's a double dose of high school sports coverage on Daily Delivery today. I am joined right now by Chris Carr, director of the high school sports franchise at the Minnesota Star-Tribune. Chris, how you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm good. It's been a little while since we talked on Daily Delivery, but welcome back. And so I was a high school sports editor back in a previous lifetime from like
just a few years ago,
2007 to 2012, somewhere in there. We used to do all Metro. Now we are much more focused on Minnesota. Tell me about the transformation we are undergoing as part of this growth in high school sports.
Yeah, I will. But first things first, man. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
48 years young.
Oh, gosh.
You're looking young. Welcome to halftime.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Life is good, man. You got a beautiful wife. You got 3 kids, probably probably 2 or 3 more on the way soon. So
no,
what?
We're done. We're good. We're at physical and mental capacity. But yes, we're good. And now you and I are the same age again, right? You're always like
we're just kids, dude. We're just kids.
We're just kids.
Let's talk about the kids, man. All Minnesota. Yeah. It's a big change for us. So many years, as you well know, of honoring all Metro athletes and players of the year from the Metro area. That served us so well for so long. At times, and I'm guessing you felt this when you were in that role. I know I have over the years. I felt a little, restricting or exclusive. There'd be a terrific player, maybe on the fringe of the Metro or even way out in greater Minnesota somewhere. And I always kind of felt like, dang, how could, wasn't that long ago, we were all crazy about Coy Parrish, right? Way up in Esco. And just there's many examples like that over the years of us kind of, sort of wishing we had a way to at least give those student athletes a nod now with our company-wide strategy to thankfully invest much more into greater Minnesota. This change for us fits. And so here we are, day one of the all Minnesota era. Just Tuesday morning, we kicked this off with the all Minnesota team for boys soccer and girls soccer players.
Pun intended? You said kicked off. Was that pun intended?
It wasn't, but let's go ahead and
with it. Okay.
Put a point on the scoreboard for me.
There you go.
And the players of the year for those sports. So, I hope readers check that out and let us know what you think. Sometimes changes like this can be tough for me. I like traditions. I've for a long time loved the all Metro approach, even with kind of the restrictive nature of it in a way. But I think it served us well. I think it's time for a change on that. And so here we are. It's good. We get to recognize and celebrate more student athletes this way too. So
Yeah.
So I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what our readers think of it. And time for, it's a new era, the all Minnesota era.
Well, I mean, one of the things that was, all Metro, you confine a little bit, right? At least you have like a smaller number of schools that you're dealing with, the teams that we see a little bit more frequently just because it's easier to get there and stuff like that. Of course, we'd hear about all these other athletes. We'd see them come a state tournament time and other times, but like, how are we going to get our arms around, every region of the state to make sure we're knowing and honoring the kids that should be seen? How are we kind of expanding our coverage to make sure we're getting to those places?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no way we can see all these teams and all these student athletes. I mean, just soccer it's a perfect example to use for this piece of our conversation, because no chance that we can go watch 100 or more soccer matches across the state to get our own eyes on this. And so what we did for soccer, and this will be our approach for most, if not all, the sports, is to lean heavily on the coaches, the ADs, and other leaders who have watched these student athletes play and compete. We rely heavily on our network of connections there, asking coaches, hey, you saw her and you saw her. Which of those players was better? Which would you pick if you had to pick one? Asking. Cassidy Hedesheimer, our newest reporter, asked each soccer coach that was that had a team at the top of a conference across Minnesota, which players stood out against you this season. Send me some names to check out. Send me. You can watch a lot of video these days.
Yeah, very true.
So you can put your own eyes on it to a degree. But more than ever, we're going to be relying on coaches and leaders and athletic directors who have had a chance to watch these athletes compete. Ask them what they've seen. Give us their opinion. So that's what we did for soccer. That's what you see us do for a lot of different sports all year.
Maybe one more thing for you as we kind of think about this is this is very early on, but obviously Cassidy and other folks have been talking to, coaches already. What has the feedback from them been that we're paying more attention to not just the Metro, but greater Minnesota as well?
Yeah, a lot of enthusiasm for sure. At this, and that's maybe to be expected at this early stage of this, is that, the outreach is, from us has been met with a lot of enthusiasm, eager to help us out with things like choosing our teams, even some smaller details about guiding us on coverage. Who should, if we're gonna drive up and see a team, if we're gonna send a reporter from one of our we've got 7 reporters stationed around the state. If somebody's gonna take a time out of their busy week to go cover a game or watch a student athlete, who should we go cover? So a lot of enthusiasm. We'll see how this plays out. We might hear from some people who missed the All Metro, team and think that we should continue to put a focus on the either the city schools or suburban conferences. Our thinking is a lot of these All Minnesota teams will be Metro heavy, just because of the nature of how all this works. Most, not all, but most of the best soccer players, basketball players, volleyball players, football players will be in the Twin Cities, but not all. So we'll see what the reaction is to that. We'll see if people miss the All Metro and have thoughts they want to share about it. We welcome them, of course. You can email preps@Star Tribune anytime, and I'm as easy as it gets, chris.carr@startribune.com.
Awesome, Chris. Well, this sounds great. I'm excited for it. I want to see how this plays out. Like I said, like when I was, when we were back in my preps heyday, it felt like enough to try to do the Metro. And we covered statewide. We would do, we'd see these teams at state tournament time. We'd have to, we'd write compelling stories, especially, football, hockey, as these teams came down down to the Metro for the state tournament. There was always great stories to tell, but like finding all these athletes, I think is a great challenge, but a worthy one, and should only enhance our coverage. I'm
excited for it too. We got a good thing going on the prep side of things. The team is growing. The readers can expect to see more stories, more coverage from us. Chip Scoggins is going to put some more time into preps. One of his big strengths, Marcus Fuller, is going to spend more time with us. Cassidy's on board. Nick Williams is on board. Just a few shout outs there, but I'm just excited about what's brewing. The All Minnesota change will be, sort of one of the first and most obvious things that that readers see. But I hope everybody hangs with it and checks us out this school year. Let us know what you think. And you, my man, have a great rest of your birthday.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Take care. All right.
All right. You too. Bye-bye, Mike.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Great stuff from Chris. Appreciate the birthday shout out. I'm so old that I remember when Joe Flacco was young, when he was a young quarterback, when the argument was he elite, things like that, when he was back with the Ravens, winning things as a rookie. Now he's a 39-year-old veteran trying to revive Indianapolis' season, perhaps could give the Vikings some problems on Sunday. That is the subject of our next segment with Ben Goessling from the Star Tribune. Joe Flacco, who may or may not be elite, will certainly be the starting quarterback for the Colts when they play the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. ESPN reporting that on Tuesday afternoon. I don't think this is great news for the Vikings. What do you think?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think I was just talking about this a little bit this morning on the radio with Paul Allen and K-Fan, and we were discussing the possibility of Richardson versus Flacco, and a lot of the discussion is what you would expect. I mean, Flacco has been pretty efficient running this offense, and Richardson obviously has not had much success other than a few highlights that we've seen. Downfield throws, a dynamic arm, his ability to move around. Certainly we've seen some of those things, but has not done a terribly good job of being able to execute this offense apart from some of the highlights. So you instead see a quarterback that's been in the league a long time, that has seen just about everything, that will keep them in this game. I do think it is a tougher assignment for the Vikings, just where the two quarterbacks are at right now, facing Joe Flacco, than Anthony Richardson on Sunday night.
Well, I mean, Flacco so far this season, he's won them 2 games essentially. Yep. He's only 1-1 officially, but he came in and finished off a game that they won. He's got 7 touchdowns, just 1 interception. I mean, Richardson's been having kind of a miserable go of it. 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's obviously about 3,000% more nimble as a runner than Joe Flacco. So it's a completely different person you're gearing up for. Flacco's 39, Richardson's 22. Like, you couldn't probably ask for 2 more disparate quarterbacks to prepare for. But Flacco saved the Browns season last season, and he's kind of doing it again for the Colts. And you see them, they're 4-4 right now. They're kind of in a spot where they're saying Joe Flacco gives us the best chance to win right now. And I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, you need somebody that can run your offense efficiently. I mean, the ability to make highlight reel plays, which Richardson certainly has, is a nice thing to have, but you need somebody who, when it's 3rd and 4, can I hit a 7-yard completion over the middle to keep the chains moving? I mean, that stuff's not the stuff that we see on highlight reels, and it's not the stuff that draws a ton of attention on social media, but it is a lot of being able to play quarterback in this league, where it's, can I change protections? Can I get us out of a bad play call to make sure that this down doesn't blow up in anybody's face? I mean, a lot of that stuff goes into the job. And everybody kind of knew with Anthony Richardson that this was going to be a little bit of a project. And it is an interesting, just kind of 30,000-foot level decision, because you had a guy that everybody said, this is going to take some time. He's going to need a little bit of a development plan to get him ready to go. And obviously he gets hurt last year, which does change that plan significantly. But then it's where the thing becomes a question of, how ready is he to go versus how quickly do we want to see him on the field, especially when you are trying to maximize that rookie contract. It is not, beyond this week, it is not irrelevant to the Vikings, because they are going to face a very similar situation to this with J.J. McCarthy potentially next year, where he misses his rookie year because of the injury. He doesn't get that development time, at least not quite in the same way. They are trying to do a lot of things behind the scenes that I'm actually writing about in the next couple of weeks, but he's not going to have the game time in the way that he would have if he would have played a little bit this year, or even the practice time if he had been healthy enough to be on the field to get at least some on-field work as the backup quarterback, or potentially starting a couple of games later in the season. Well, however that would have looked, he can't do it. So now you're going into next year, potentially if he becomes the starter, you're trying to do so based on not really much on-field development time for him, kind of like what Richardson was this year. I don't think anybody is looking at McCarthy saying he's the same level of project as Richardson.
No.
Played a lot in college, played a lot more in college, played it in a pro-style offense. So those things do change, but it is a reminder of this tug of war, so to speak, between developing quarterbacks long-term and saying we want this guy to play now because he's a rookie quarterback, and if he's good, it gives us a huge financial surplus at that position. So it's a reminder, I think, in some ways of how tenuous this can be when you're trying to develop a guy that you draft that high, and there's all sorts of expectations. There's all sorts of excitement to see him that can play out in a lot of different ways. But being able to say, we're going to wait, and maybe it'll still work out fine for Anthony Richardson. But this, when the Vikings talk about how difficult it can be to take a quarterback from draft night to a long, successful career, this does kind of ring on some of those notes, I think.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because Richardson was the quarterback they liked in the 2023 draft. And if things had happened differently, if they had had a lesser season, they might have been in a position to take Anthony Richardson at that point versus where they wound up. But yeah, where they were, they certainly weren't going to get Anthony Richardson at that point. But a guy that they liked, certainly. And then going forward, kind of spinning forward, you wouldn't mind this so much if you thought you could pressure Joe Flacco, because obviously he is not mobile at all. That was the element that Anthony Richardson brings. You get to play a completely different defense. But the success that Brian Flores has had against young quarterbacks, and then the disappearance last week of the pass rush, and you really, in the last couple of weeks, they just haven't gotten enough pressure. What if they only had 3 pressures against Stafford last week? Like, that's got to be concerning. Like, Flacco's the kind of guy that can kind of like Stafford and Goff, diagnose a play, get the ball out. He's not going to be confused as much by some of what Flores is trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think they are going to have to just be better at getting home and winning one-on-one matchups, being able to set edges, being able to turn corners and get to the quarterback, because it's not going to be as much of you do things that he's never seen. I mean, a lot of these coverages, once you get through a lot of the pre-snap stuff where they're trying to disguise things, or they have 7 guys on the line of scrimmage, all those different things, they do become, more standard coverages. You may get to them in different ways, especially a lot of their cover 2. They have, what I guess the football wonks, a lot of football wonks call non-traditional Tampas. I mean, you're getting to Tampa 2 covers, but not playing it quite the same way. They have plenty of that, but a lot of it is on tape, and a lot of it is something that if you're playing cover 2, you know how to handle cover 2 by this point in Joe Flacco's career, certainly. So a lot of what they do, and Brian Flores talked about this a lot today, it's not necessarily reinventing things. It's all of the little details in plays. I mean, giving up 3 first downs on third down penalties against the Rams is a big factor in that game. A lot of that stuff has to be better against veteran quarterbacks, because you're just not going to trick them in the same way that you might with a young quarterback. So Flacco playing is another reminder of what they're going to have to do against quarterbacks that they just can't trick in quite the same way. So I do think it's not good news for the Vikings necessarily, but it is sort of another thing that will probably help coaches drive home what I think they've been talking a lot about this week, is just the little details have to be a little bit better to get back to winning on Sunday night.
Where's the subterfuge? Final thing. Where's the subterfuge? Why did they let this leak on a Tuesday? Come on, like make them prepare for 2 quarterbacks, right?
Yeah. And especially 2 quarterbacks that are
completely different.
They are.
Yes,
it's probably a reminder, closed circuit to NFL coaches who are watching this, which I'm guessing none of them are, because they have much better things to do. But it is a reminder that subterfuge probably doesn't win you that many games in the end of this league. And coaches do it when they have opportunities to do it, because, why not? If you don't have to release information, then why do it? But They may have decided it's better to just send a message this week and clear up any discussion or confusion about who is going to start. But yeah, when you have Anthony Richardson, who plays very differently than Joe Flacco, they decided at some point to not play that card of the curveball of not knowing who the quarterback is going to be. They said, let's just go with Joe Flacco and go from there.
It's a gift to NBC. They flexed this game. We're like, what are they doing? And now there's more intrigue, at least, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think NBC moves this game when the Vikings, I think, were still undefeated. And the Colts, who I think had a winning record at the time, and it was Eagles-Jaguars. They didn't like that matchup for a lot of obvious reasons either. But yes, with both of these teams floundering a little bit, the Colts losing with Richardson, and then the Vikings losing the last two, you want something that's a little more palatable in terms of a close competitive game for NBC. I'm sure they're thinking about some of those things. Not that the Colts make any of these decisions based on that, but a hidden benefit for NBC, I guess, in that regard.
These Vikings can't stop making news. I talked to Ben it was like late, early afternoon on Tuesday after the Joe Flacco stuff broke. I talked to Andrew Kramer the day before that for the Tuesday film review segment. I was like, Andrew, I don't want the Vikings to make any trades. I just kind of feel like they are who they are. Let's not get too fancy with, giving up future picks. Then they go and make a move. Let's finish with the cooler. Cam Robinson, left tackle, added to the mix. Conditional pick in 2026, not going to be any higher than a fourth rounder. I guess that's okay. As long as they're not giving up capital next year where they barely have any, that's okay with me. Kind of solidifies that position a little bit more in the wake of the Christian Darrisaw season-ending injury. Probably a better option than anything they had in-house. You probably could, move Blake Brandel over to left tackle, play Dalton Reisner at guard. You're probably okay, but you really don't have much depth beyond that with Quesenberry, maybe your only swing tackle. So adding more depth to that room, not a bad idea for the 5-2 Vikings. Still a good chance to make the playoffs, a good chance to right themselves in this part of the schedule. But I do feel like Ben and I talked about, I do feel like this game against Indianapolis is more of a challenge now with Joe Flacco playing quarterback than it was when Anthony Richardson and his 44% completion percentage was going to be the guy. So we'll see what Brian Flores has in store for Joe Flacco on Sunday night. That will do it for me today. Lavelle Eniel III expected to join me on tomorrow's show, our daily delivery debate segment. Tons of good stuff, tons of stuff to choose from there, so listen for that on Thursday's show. Until then, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow.